To do this drawing, you'll need a copy of this sheet, the info sheet, so that you can see how the larva really looks, and you can see the different kinds of tubes that the larva builds around its abdomen. So I'll recommend that you have one of those to look at. And then also, I will assume that you've watched the recommended videos. There's one by PBS, and there's another kind of just informational video. Fabulous footage of the little caddisfly larva building its tube. So I'll kind of assume that we're coming into this with you already having some general knowledge about caddisflies. So our main task here will be to draw the larva and then to draw its tube shell. So we'll talk a little bit about the anatomy of the larva as we go along. So you'll see that I've given you starting dots down here. Now this isn't to insult your drawing skills, but we do need to move quickly, and I don't want you making it too large or small and then you're off the page, and so that's no fun. So these will assure you of getting the larva right on the page where it's supposed to be, because it's going to have to fit underneath an extra piece. So it's critical to get it placed properly. So let's work on the abdomen first. See all these series of dots here? So these are kind of the places where it comes down. You're going to draw a little kind of lump above each. In fact, I'll just show you, kind of like this. So we're going to go hump, 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 and I put the dot right here in the middle. So you can just go like this, down and up and down, coming down right on those little dots. Doesn't matter if your little humps are a little flatter or more humpy, it's fine. It'll be just fine either way. And then the same on the bottom. Here, going. Gonna come in wherever the dot is. And then around to that. So these end marks here, this line right here, and this line over here mark the beginning and end of the abdomen. And you'll remember that insects have 3 body parts: head, thorax, and abdomen. So this guy's got a really, really long abdomen, and actually pretty long thorax too, but the abdomen in some insects is a little bit shorter, but this guy's got a really long one. And this is where a lot of the digestion occurs. And this is also the nice squishy soft thing that is so delicious. Fish love to eat these, and other animals like this nice soft abdomen. So you can shade a little bit here if you'd like to, make it look like it goes in if you want to be extra artsy. You don't have to, but if you want to just add a little bit like that. I'm just kind of zigzagging. And you can always add this later. Sometimes artists do a thing called cross hatching, where they make little lines like that. Now in my sample here, I did what's called stippling, making little tiny dots. And that's very time consuming. I don't really recommend that. That's very time consuming. Alright. So I'm going to move on. If you want to spend a lot more time shading, that's something you can definitely do on your own afterwards. But let's work a little more on the anatomy. Very importantly, at the bottom here, on every one of these segments, you're going to have 2 little things coming off. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit now that we've got that drawn. It looks like 2 little sticks coming off like that, or like little leg things. It's like each one of these is going to have little legs like this. And these are going to be where the gills are located. So the caddisfly larva, except don't put it on the last one. This number 9, you've got 8 segments, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This 9th is kind of a weird, you can just put a couple hairs on like that. So the caddisfly larva lives under the water all the time. Some aquatic insect larvae, such as mosquito larvae, I think even dragonfly larvae, come to the surface to breathe. They have a little siphon or something where they need to come to the surface. These guys, as far as I know, never come to the surface. They are fully aquatic, just like a crayfish or a fish, so they need to have gills to take the oxygen out of the water. So gills need to be very fluffy because they need a lot of surface area. So we're going to give them some extra things like this. Each one of those little sticks, those little legs, needs to have some fringes coming off of it. So then the oxygen would get picked up by the tissues in those, and then it would be would go up into the body and circulate around the tissues. Now, insects don't have a circulatory system with blood vessels like mammals do. It's pretty rudimentary. It's just the oxygen kind of sloshes around, floats around. Usually it's like an open circulatory system, so everything just kind of sloshes. Okay, and then we can label these gills. And then let's give it some sensory hairs on the top. Now, different species will have different patterns or lengths or whatever. This is just kind of your average caddisfly larva. So, main things to know that insects also don't have a nervous system like we do. They don't have nerve endings in their skin. And so all their sensory information comes in through little hairs. If you've ever seen an ant under a magnifier, you'll know that it's very hairy. All insects are hairy. And so these, well, this is soft, so it doesn't really have a problem with being inside of a, like that chitin, almost like armor. But most of the time, the adult insects, beetles, ants, have that really tough skin, the exoskeleton. So that exoskeleton is really not sensitive. It doesn't have the nerve endings that we have coming to the surface in our skin. So poking through the exoskeleton is at various places, you'll have a hair, and then the base of the hair would be attached to a nerve ending. So when the hair moves, it's going to trigger the nerve ending, and then it does have enough of a nervous system that the nerves would run to a central area, usually in the head, a quote brain. It's kind of a nerve ganglion, but you know, something that resembles a brain. So they would be relayed to the brain area. Okay, hopefully everybody's caught up now with the abdomen. In fact, we can even label this abdomen. So everything between that line and that line. So actually, you know what, let's finish this first at the end here. It's got two little things that stick off here. They're not legs. They kind of look like it maybe a little bit, but they're not. And then I made this one come down, and this one kind of looks like it's in perspective. It's kind of on the right side. And then right here, make a little sharp hook. That one and that one. It's got a little like claw on the end, and I would assume that's so it can hang on to the back of its tube, or it can hook that in and then pull itself inside. It's like a little anchor. And then here it's got some more like hair things, sensory hair stuff going out. And let's label that little hook. It's actually technically called a claw. C-L-A-W, so let's label a claw. And these things, if you want to know what they're called, I just went and looked it up. They are called prolegs. Prolegs, abdominal prolegs. So now let's go to the thorax. So between this line here and this one, this is going to be your thorax. And that leaves this area here. This is going to be the head. So there's our 3 body parts. And the legs always come off the thorax. So I've given you this little starter V over here. See that thing? Right, so the top is going to come down to this, like that, and then kind of make a bump like that, and a bump like that. And then they have something kind of unusual on each little segment of the thorax. There's like a little piece of armor, there's a top shield. So this thing's going to come down like this, and almost to that little V thing like that. And then in the second segment, leave a little space. And then the second little shield thing starts about here and goes to that dot. And they kind of have that sort of come to a point a little bit like that. Okay. And then the last one, also leave a little space, and then now in different species they're going to look a little bit different. They're going to be a different size or a little bit different shapes. This is just kind of your very average caddisfly. So those are what we call sclerotized, which means extra hard. A little bit of top armor, which is probably good because it's going to be going in and out of that tube, and that will probably get very sore rubbing right here. So this is the part that is in contact with the outside of the tube. And then there's a little bit, if you want to make it just like my original drawing, I had a little bit of darkening down there. I don't know how many species have this, but it looks nice anyways. And then if you want to shade just a little bit between them like that, and a little bit under there. And then you can make some hairs, setae coming out, so it can have some sensory information. And then each of these segments is going to have a pair of legs coming off of it. And I've started you right here, these little upside down V's is sort of where the leg comes out, and then I've given you little lines so you know where each segment ends, so you don't end up with a leg like so long it's going off the paper or too short. So let's start at the back, third pair of legs, and you're going to continue this little V down like this, and then kind of make the shape like this. Now, you can relax when drawing this because I looked at a lot of caddisfly larvae in order to make this drawing, and some legs are skinnier, some are fatter. there's a lot of different variation in the leg shape and what the segments look like. So whatever you draw is probably fine. Like that. And then mine's going to come kind of like around like this. And it kind of has like a little kind of curvy connecting piece like that. And there's names for all of these that are really similar to the names of our arm and finger bones. You know, they have a tibia and stuff like that. Okay, and then down to this next segment, like that. And then I'm going to let you draw the last two. They get real small. 1, 2, and the last one just kind of comes to a point. So they have 5 in all. And then there's some sensory hairs coming out, especially at the joints. That's a very common pattern with insects. And there's usually a little tool right here, located right here. There's often an actual little, it's not just a hair, it's stiffer. It's like a little finger or something comes off here that they can use to groom their antennae or to do, you know, almost like a thumb that comes off of that segment. Alrighty, and then you can shade a little bit on the bottom if you want to, or skip it, whatever. And then the other legs will be very, very similar to this. I'm going to have that same kind of shape like this. Now it's going to flare out a little bit. And then down to this one. And then I'm going to let you add the last two. And then some sensory hairs. A little extra thing there. And the last one is usually a little bit shorter than the others, I think. Most larvae, it looked like it was a little bit shorter. So I'm going to make these last two really small. 1, 2. It ends up a little bit shorter. And now we can draw in the back here. Just come down like this, and then kind of up like that. So this will be, right, you can kind of see, concentrate on that first segment. You're making these segments. And then again, kind of go up in the middle. And then any shading you want to do, make it look a little bit lumpy. Actually, I should have brought this one down a little bit. You can leave yours. I'm going to make it look more like original. If you want. And then there's a little bit, there's a darkening. I couldn't quite see what it was in the picture I was working from. But there's a little, some kind of a darkening when it's an indent where it went in. I couldn't really see, but it looked nice anyways. And then lastly, the head. And you can see down here where I gave you two little guidelines. right between those is where your little mandible by the mouth is going to come out. It's actually called labium, which means is Greek, I think, for lips. So these are the things that would help hold the food and stuff it in the mouth and maybe help chop it up. So there's a lot of different shapes. It depends on what the larva is eating. So some of the caddisfly species are shredders, and they like to take leaves and go snip, 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 snip. So their mouth parts would be more like a scissor. And then some of them are scrapers, and they like to go along the rocks and scrape algae off rocks. So they would need to have mouth parts that are really good for scraping. The shape would really allow them to be efficient at scraping. And others might be eating something else, maybe dead bugs or something. And so the mouth part is going to be suited to what they're eating. So we don't really know what this one is eating. We're going to kind of give it an average kind of a mouth part. Just something kind of like this is fine. And then, let's see, we can even go up a little bit into the head like that. And then I'm going to continue this bottom like this. And then before I draw the other mouth part, I'm just going to continue the head all the way up and over. Like that. Kind of like a nice egg shape. And then I'm going to put the other mouth part kind of peeking out. This is going to kind of be in perspective here, kind of coming out the other side. Like that. And some of them, I don't know, some of them look more frilly. Anyways, we'll just say that guy's a shredder. Looks like that might be good for shredding. And then give him an eye right there. And then it's an insect, so there has to be an antennae somewhere. It does have one, but it's very small. They're usually almost not even visible, kind of laying down on its forehead, maybe something like that. You know how ants kind of bend forward. This one's so bent forward, it's just almost lying down like that. So the position and size of the antennae helps the scientists figure out what kind of caddisfly it is. Some of them are closer to the mouth or further back, but we'll just kind of give it an average location there. Okay, and then you can just shade a little under here if you want to. And just one more thing before we move on, as long as we're doing the head, let's put a label here for the silk glands. I'm not exactly sure where they are. I know they're somewhere very near the mouth. So let's just show that we know that they're there and just put an arrow close to the mouth, or you could put a little dot or something, although that might look like it's on the outside. But let's just write silk glands. Now this is important because it's very different from a spider. In a spider, the silk glands are at the end of the abdomen. It comes out the very back. But in both caddisfly and also in moths, like the silk moths, the silk glands are located in the front. So the larva can use its mouth parts to pull and stretch and weave with it. So if its silk gland was at the end of its abdomen, it wouldn't be able to make that nice tube. For this next part, you're going to need one of these, and you can make it go either way. I tried to cut it to trim off all the black, so it's nothing but white, because you're going to design a case for it, and this is going to be a glue flap, so we can put it over so we can see that it is living in the tube. And then we can also lift it up to see the larva underneath. So what we need to do is not get glue. You can kind of fit yours and see, oh, it's going to cover my word abdomen. We can also go like this and just glue the flap on. You see how it's glued on like that? That would be fine too. So it doesn't cover my word abdomen. So it should fit kind of just nicely right over there. Some of this can peek out over here or not. Either way, it doesn't matter if it covers it more like this or this. You can put it wherever. So in this area right here, not counting the flap, you are going to design a home for your larva. And you can do whatever you want on this. I recommend looking at some of these, seeing what some of these guys do. This one's all leaves and twigs. This one's got some snails glued onto it and some twigs. This one is all pebbles, beautiful colored pebbles. If you want something easy, you can just sort of go like this, and you can make some rocks, different shapes. You can add some color if you would like to. Hopefully you've watched the video and you see how careful they are placing all their stones just right. And if you want, you can shade around it, make them look 3D if you'd like to. Or you can also use cut paper. There's a lot of different ways you could do this. And maybe you want to include, maybe I want to include a snail here. Or I want to include a stick. And like I said, you can use colored pencils or watercolors or whatever. Alright, so you're just going to design the case and then a little bit glue on like that, attach it, and you'll have your completed drawing then.